You know when you're healing or heal when you're dealing with people who have trauma and you realize you're no longer a match to them in that relationship. And I had an experience, a summer fling, if you will, a true proper summer fling. It was beautiful. It was great. A lot of love, a lot of passion, a lot of stimulation, a lot of connection, a lot of intimacy, a lot of growth happened there. A lot. And I mean, beyond what I ever thought was possible. I thought I was on a healing journey. You're on a healing journey by yourself. And then you realize how far or how, let me not say far, you realize exactly where you're at on said healing journey when you open it up to somebody else. And I don't mean someone else doing your healing journey with you. I mean, you open up the space for someone to come in, like said summer fling, while you're on your healing journey. And it really shows you the areas and places where you still need to heal, where you still have to do the work. And I'm grateful for this experience, but I think one way that you can know, one, who's doing the work and who's not doing the work, I think when you first meet people, everything is fine, everything is friendly, everything is copacetic. And I think if two people are doing the work, maybe not completely healed, but I think if two people are doing the work to heal themselves, to heal their traumas, to heal their past, to let go of it, to get a better future for themselves, to carve a life that they want, if two people are doing the work, it's going to show. And I think you're still going to be on the same frequency, to where the same vibe, to where they can stay in your life and it's not off-putting. You don't repel each other. But I think sometimes when you really get down to it, when you really get down to the nitty-gritty with people and you start getting closer and you start getting to know them and you start understanding how their brains work and what they've been hurt by in the past and where their fears come from, when you really start understanding that, I think there's two categories of people, and maybe more, but we're going to simplify it to two. I think there are people who address and there are people who repress. And I think naturally these people repel each other. If you two are both addressing your fears, addressing your traumas, addressing your anxiety, addressing your depression, addressing your shortcomings, addressing your goals, addressing your cute dog, addressing your squirrel moment, addressing your squirrel moments. As long as you're both addressing, you can progress. You can progress. Oh, that's good. If you're addressing, you're progressing. I think that makes sense. And then in the other group, you have the people who repress. If you have an argument, you don't want to talk about it the next day, or you don't want to unpack it. You just kind of want to act like nothing happened and you want to move on. You want to start a brand new day, brand new life. Let's go. New start. You're repressing your traumas. You're repressing your fears. You're repressing the depression. You're repressing what makes you uncomfortable, the hard conversations. You're repressing love, essentially. You're repressing anything that would bring you closer to this person. And I think the people who repress regress. So if you're addressing your issues and thoughts and fears and hopes and goals and dreams and wishes and what have you, you're progressing in relationships. And I think if you repress all of those things and you try to just cover them up and be happy and be fun and enjoy this person, it can only last for so long. It can only last for so long. Mine only lasted for a summer before we started really uncovering and getting deep and getting into the things. And honestly, I think the more healed you become, the less things there are to get into, because you're taking life as it comes every day. You're not having to go back to your childhood traumas and dig that up and talk that up. You're not having to go back to your old relationships and traumas from that and bring that up. You're not having to go back to how your parents didn't love you. You're not having to do all of that because you've healed those parts of yourself. And so naturally, they no longer come up in situations and spaces when you're just hanging out with people or getting to know people closely, intimately. But I think as long as you avoid doing that work, as long as you are repressing, it's always going to show up. It's always going to continue to show up in your reality. And I think it's a gift. It really is a gift because it shows up in the forms of triggers. It shows up in the forms of where you feel like you're lacking in life. It shows up in the forms of where you feel offended. It shows up in the form of when you get defensive. All these things are little itty bitty gifts. They're gifts that God gives you. They're gifts that the universe brings to you and says, hey, what are you going to do with this time on today? What are you going to do with this? Are you going to address it or are you going to repress it? And I think that determines which direction you're moving in with yourself always, 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 because you don't necessarily need to be in a relationship with a person to be progressing or regressing. You can be regressing with your relationship to self. You can be regressing by yourself. But I think in relationships, it becomes more prominent because for whatever reason, whenever we have another person to be accountable for or to care for or to think about, we take our journey more seriously for whatever reason. I have disagreements about that, but that's another conversation for another day. But I think, it gives you the opportunity. What are you going to choose today? And then as long as you're choosing the progressing path, I think people can move forward. But if someone's progressing and addressing, and if someone's repressing and regressing, it's a natural repellent. Like you're literally just going to move away from each other. And I think on some levels that's okay because it lets you know where you're at and it lets you know where they're at. And it is sad. It is heartbreaking, especially if you really care for the person. But at the end of the day, whoever's doing the work, it's going to show. Like you can only hide for so long. You can only hide behind the self-care quotes for so long. You can only hide behind the healing. You can only hide behind the fake healing for so long until you figure out who's doing the real work. And I think that just becomes very apparent. And I think when people naturally separate from you, I don't think that always means that they're not doing the work, but I think 9 times out of 10, it probably means that either they're not working on themselves as hard and as rigorously and as honestly and as transparently and as vulnerably as the other party is. Because I think when both people are doing that appropriately, it shows. And I think you naturally grow toward each other instead of away from each other. So I just had that little life lesson drop into my heart, and I wanted to share because I think recently, just with the summer fling and just people in my life in 2023 was a very eye-opening year for me. And I think that's one of the things that I've kind of noticed. And again, it's not to say that everyone who leaves your life for whatever reason isn't doing the work, but maybe they're just not either doing it in the way that you are, or they're just on a different journey, and everyone has their own way of getting to where they need to be, where they want to be in life. But I think that's one thing I've noticed from people that I'm either drifting apart from or growing apart from or separating. It's like you can't be moving forward when someone's moving backward and expect to move together. So yeah, that's the message on today.